At about 35 minutes in, he breaks my heart because the first book will have a dragon in it. Hey friends, welcome to Word of Jim Wednesday. The interview that I watched this week was An Hour with Jim Butcher, DragonCon 2024. But without further ado, let's get started. At about 4 minutes and 50 seconds in, somebody asked Jim Butcher to weigh in on their group's drunken debate. If Molly falls in line of duty, who wins the fight when Charity goes after Mab? The entire crowd went, ooh! And I honestly yelled at the TV and scared my dog, so this was a big question. Jim Butcher said that he didn't know on the spot and would probably have to write that one out. Apparently, Charity has chilled out a bit since the beginning of the series, and hopefully, big if here. That means that this fight wouldn't happen. But we all know that Charity has already stormed Arctis Store, and now Harry's the Winter Knight, so he'd have to fight her, and honestly, I wouldn't want to see that fight. I value my life too much to fight the sparring partner of a Knight of the Cross, personally. And I think Dresden does too. Somebody asked if there was any news on the Maggie books. This question is referring to the spin-off middle grade / YA series that Jim Butcher was thinking of doing with a friend or a family member who's a teacher. And Butcher said that he doesn't really have an update on that right now because he just doesn't have the energy to add a third project to his plate. Honestly, I don't read middle grade books, I like darker stuff, but I would read the crap out of this one. Mouse is a good boy, everyone says so. Honestly, I'd really like to get into Maggie's head, she saw some really terrible stuff happen. And I know she had the benefit of being adopted by the Carpenters for a while, but there's also probably stuff that she still hasn't fully resolved, and Mouse does his best to be a good boy and a good service dog for her. But it would still be cool to see how she's sort of processing that and trying to be a normal girl given the circumstances. At about the 8-minute 35-second mark, somebody asked, does the skull that Bob lives in belong to his parents, or did somebody create that one for him? Jim Butcher laughed at this, and we know that when he laughs at it, somebody's onto something. He said that this question is really hard to answer without giving away what we know about King something. So basically, this is the skull of a guy who tried to give birth to Bob and didn't have somebody like Molly to help him through the process. Honestly, I don't think Harry would have survived if Molly hadn't helped him. All the Winterface stuff, that earring helped him get through the pain, but it didn't give him any practical benefit beyond just ignoring that things hurt. But what else are fairy mantles good for when it comes to Harry, huh? At about the 13-minute 20-second mark, Butcher says that he used tabletop roleplay games to test new story worlds. He'll stop and run a game in that world because players never do what you expect them to do. And apparently that's a lot like writing characters. You think it's going to go one way, and then the characters have thoughts and feelings and stuff and take the story in a completely different direction. Sometimes he goes so far as to have multiple campaigns in the same world that he's toying around with, and that's dedication. I don't know if I have friends, okay, I totally do, have friends in real life who would do really terrible campaigns with me because I've never done a campaign before as a DM, and I'd probably be terrible at it. I don't know, I just get taken out of the story when I play D&D when people are like, oh, you need to roll this in order to do this and blah, blah, blah. It just takes me out of the immersive experience, and slowing down to do math when I'm trying to play a game kind of sucks. But I respect the hell out of people that enjoy that stuff, so if that's your thing, comment down below. When I read the Dresden Files, a lot of times the characters do give off the vibe that there's a character sheet for them rotting in a drawer somewhere. There's a really good story at about the 14-minute 45-second mark, where somebody asks what inspired the Denarians. Apparently Butcher designed Michael's character first, and he wanted to make more of him. Then he remembered that he had basically written Michael's sword as having a nail from the cross in it, and since there were 3 nails, he could add 2 more Michaels, and that's how we got the Knights of the Cross. The problem was he made the Knights of the Cross super OP, and he needed something to balance them out. That way, when they were hopelessly outnumbered, they could realistically save the day. And when I say outnumbered, I mean 10 to 1. So there just happens to be 30 pieces of silver that Judas got for betraying his BFF Jesus Christ, and that's how everything clicked. He used the word process, but he used it in a way that implies that thinking of the Denarians wasn't really a hard process for him. I know writing is hard, and sometimes the characters that you want don't come out of your brain when you want them to, so this is really cool that he actually got a easy time with this. Making up stuff is hard. At about the 17-minute and 38-second mark, somebody asks if, apart from Harry and the original Merlin, do we know of any other Wardens of Demon Reach? And apparently the original Merlin was not a Warden of Demon Reach. And there's been 2 other Wardens that the White Council doesn't know about. Apparently you have to either be completely establishment or completely outsider to do so. The closed captions on my TV when I was watching this interview capitalized the word outsider. I'm not sure if Jim Butcher meant it that way, but it's got my spidey senses tingling. At 18 minutes and 47 seconds in, somebody asks how involved the Knights of the Cross will be in the rest of the books. Butcher wants to get a new wielder of Amarachius out first, but right now we have Michael's son. Daniel's back in Chicago helping out just because it's necessary. But if there's big bad supernatural things going on, then the Knights of the Cross are sent to take care of them, and that's just how it is. I remember from Ghost Story that Daniel was upset that the swords weren't being used more to help, given, the total free-for-all power struggle that was going on after changes. It reminded me of Father Douglas from the short story The Warrior, which is in the book Side Jobs. But I really don't see Daniel being a successor to Michael as a bearer of Amarachius. I don't think that the swords are really supposed to be a hereditary thing, and Michael is about as lawful good as you can possibly be, so it's really hard to live up to that. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to get the sword. At about the 22-minute mark, somebody asked if there was any tradition or book that inspired Jim Butcher when he was trying to figure out the magic system in Dresden Files. And apparently Jim Butcher went to Borders and picked the 3 cheapest books out of the metaphysical section. And apparently the book that gave him the most inspiration from that is called Fairy Wicca. At about the 22-minute and 45-second mark, somebody yells out War Eagle, and Jim Butcher replies War Eagle, so he might be an Auburn fan. I don't know, maybe SEC Shorts is going to come to Dragon Con. That would actually be hilarious if Swaggerbuilt made an appearance at Dragon Con at one of his panels. But the person had a really good question about if there was a Dresden character that he'd want to transport to our world, and Jim Butcher's response was more mouses. And that is the right answer, because Mouse is a very good boy, and everybody said so. At around the 22-minute and 50-second mark, somebody asked if Mab made Thomas the Winter Knight, could his hunger feed off of winter? And the answer is yes, he'd be very powerful and efficient, but it would do terrible things to him. If you are what you eat, the Winter Mantle would be frickin' scary. But Thomas is a very self-aware character, he knows what he is, and his first line in a short story is even, I'm Thomas Wraith and I'm a monster. I think he tries really hard to be a vegetarian vampire, and tries to do the right thing and be a good person, but his nature often gets in the way, especially when he's weak. And I mean, parallel for all of us. I'm a terrible person when I'm hungry. I think everybody is. But if the Winter Mantle fed him and helped him overcome his inhibitions that try to make him a better person, then he might end up being the White Court vampire version of what some of the Red Court vampires were, where they were basically just obsessed with blood and eating and kind of addicted to that at all costs. Honestly, at that point, I think Laura would try to take him out, because then he'd be too much of a liability. At 26 minutes and 50 seconds in, somebody asked why Murphy had to fall on Battleground. Right to the chest. Mortals always have an expiration date, and Butcher truly wishes that he could have done something about that. Sure he does. But she did have the fate that he envisioned earlier on in the series, and he goes to clarify that later on, so stay tuned. I'm still very bitter about it. At 30 minutes and 47 seconds, somebody asked if we would get more of Mab like her origin story. And apparently she's not really a character where you get an origin story. There is some tie-in with Merlin's story though. And this is the kind of hint that makes me wish that I'd actually paid attention enough to know what books I needed to read up on Merlin, because I have no idea. Tell me in the comments if you do. Around the 33-minute and 37-second mark, somebody asked if Jim Butcher had a parrot, what would he have him say? Go right! Go right! Go right! At 34 minutes, somebody asks who Jim Butcher's favorite author is for fantasy, and it can't be him. He said it was a toss-up between Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and the authors that basically got him into writing, and his more recent favorite author right now is Naomi Novik. Apparently the Temeraire series is really, really good. Book 1 is His Majesty's Dragon, and I'd never heard of that story. I knew that she wrote books like A Deadly Education and The Last Graduate. I'm only through half of this book, so if you've read it, tell me what you think. Also, comment who your favorite authors and series are, and tell us about them in the comments. At about 35 minutes in, he breaks my heart. Somebody asks if there's been a time when a comment or question from somebody inspired a scene in the books. And apparently there was a fan fiction where Murphy was slain. It was very well written, and apparently it came around when he wrote book 5 of Dresden Files. And that's how he got the idea for how Murphy met her fate in Battleground. You know who you are, and it's all your fault. I don't cry for fictional characters, and I cried so damn hard when Murphy met her fate, and I'm still not okay. Good job, I guess. At about 36 minutes in, we find out that Jim Butcher imagines Harry Dresden as being kind of a cross between Harrison Ford and David Duchovny with a slight John Wayne accent. At around 38 minutes in, we get another fanfiction question, and we learn that Jim Butcher has a My Little Pony figurine of Harry with a little pentagram cutie mark, or whatever you call those. I didn't watch My Little Pony. And there's a story behind it, because apparently his 14-year-old niece made him watch My Little Pony so that he could read My Little Pony mixed with Dresden Files fanfiction. That's a loving uncle. But yeah, go watch the interview. That story's really good. Then at around 41 minutes, somebody starts a question with, I just started reading the Dresden Files and I'm on book 3. And they're at that panel with all the spoilers through book 17. I felt so bad for them. But they asked Jim what his favorite book was, and he said that it's starting to be 12 months because it's very different and it's challenging, and he's very interested in how it comes out. 12 months seems like it's going to be a combo of a cool down book like Ghost Story, but also a setup book like Peace Talks. It's not going to have much action, but you have to set up stuff so that the payoff books like Changes make sense. Now, around the 43-minute mark, somebody asks the normal question of how many books before the big apocalyptic trilogy. And then he drops this. He tells us that we'll know that we're getting into the BAT because the first book will have a dragon in it. When I heard this, I had to go back and watch it a couple times because something else flashed through my mind. So Faith Astor from the short story Restoration of Faith is supposed to show up when the BAT starts. Girl plus dragon, right? Well, way back in Proven Guilty, we learned that Michael and Charity's meet cute was Michael saving her from a dragon and slaying it. Is Faith going to be in danger from another dragon at the beginning of Stars and Stones? Reddit says that there's some word of Jim about how dragons are major elemental forces and taking them out can have big consequences. I can't find the reference yet. If you know it, put it in the comments. I assume that the gifts at Bianca's party were meant to infect the recipients because that's what happened when Leah got Morgana's anathema, the knife thingy. And Faravax the dragon got a gift that is probably in Marcone's vault right now. Is this trying to hint at it being possible to infect dragons? Is that what happened to the one that Michael slew and the main reason he got sent on that mission? I don't know yet, but I think I'm onto something. Then around the 43-minute and 35-second mark, Jim Butcher explains that Harry Dresden, as a battleground, is only level 12 or 13 in Dungeons & Dragons. I thought he was a lot higher level than that, to be perfectly honest. What's he going to be like at the bat? Around the 49-minute and 42-second mark, somebody asks if Dracul knew the Dark Hollow or would he work with Kemmler. And apparently Dracul's character thinks that Kemmler is hilarious. That's really dark humor. That's a really similar answer to the answer that Callum Kumori gave Harry when he asked if they were working with the disciples of Kemmler. So apparently not all the baddies are on the same side. And those were my favorite parts of that interview. So comment down below which one was your favorite. Let me know if you like this kind of stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.